Here we go. We're going to look at future skills first. Each time what I will do, I will show a teaser, only a teaser. And then afterwards, we have several questions with the panelists. And what I will initially do, I will start from my far right and come back here. And then afterwards, we go in the other direction. And then we'll do it a little bit randomly. So we're going to look at future skills first. Then we're going to look at, well, how do you scale with impact? Obviously, you want to have impact. No impact, what's the purpose? Finally, is the apprenticeship model returning? And that may surprise you that that's here, but the apprenticeship model is actually an interesting model, but more on that later on. First of all, and it has been mentioned before, and it's a slide that I've been showing for more than a year, the fourth industrial revolution has arrived. Now, if you read Klaus Schwab's book, he would argue that the fourth industrial revolution is the world where there's a fusion of the digital, the physical, and the biological world. I'm not suggesting we should explore the biological world, but we should definitely explore how the physical and the digital world is increasingly coming together. That's one aspect of the fourth industrial revolution. Other aspects of the fourth industrial revolution is clock speed is accelerating. So the first industrial revolution took 150 years. The second one, 75. The third one, 35. How long will the fourth one take? So as a result, players, whether they're education institutions or other, have to play very quickly on the ball. It's crucial. So let me then start with, again from the World Economic Forum, the skills of the future. And our panelists cannot see this, unfortunately. There are no other screens. But I'm going to only look at the skills of the future required to be successful in the era of the fourth industrial revolution. And I'm going to read to you the top 20 skills and also highlight, especially for our panelists, which were there already in 2015 and which have increased or decreased in importance. First of all, complex problem solving. That was there already before. Complex problem solving is something which is critically important in the past and also today. Critical thinking. Critical thinking has actually grown in importance compared to 2015. Creativity. People management. Coordinating with others. Emotional intelligence. Who has emotional intelligence around the room? You don't have to raise your hands here. Judgment and decision making. Very often in an environment of complexity, ambiguity, uncertainty, where a lot of information comes at you and very difficult to make sense of that. Service orientation, negotiation, and cognitive flexibility. Yesterday, Dottore Giuseppe from the CFA Institute, well, he was on the board of the CFA Institute, presented actually what is important in terms of skills, not in general, but for financial professionals. And he also talked about the T-shaped consultant or the T-shaped professional. Are you familiar with the T-shaped professional? Basically, very quickly, what it means is you need to have a broad set of skills. You need to know a lot about many things, but you need to know also what your spike is. What is your area of excellence? And I mentioned to Giuseppe yesterday that I used to work for McKinsey and also at Shell. And at Shell and McKinsey have a talent development model that is based on being a T-shaped professional. Now, what does that mean? Don't become an expert too quickly, especially if you want to grow into top management. Don't specialize too quickly. There are exceptions to the rule. But in general, and I see Giuseppe nodding, so he agrees, which is not bad, right? So, all right, so shall we start from here? So, fourth industrial revolution, looking at future skills. 2 questions for the panel. And I will start with Nurlan, my far right, Then Marion, I will come all the way back. Is that okay? So, first question is, and it shouldn't be a surprise to them because I emailed them before. So, what are, in your opinion, the top 3 skills? It doesn't have to be from this list, by the way. It can be based on your own experience, your own surveys, your own client base. The top 3 skills needed to be successful in the future. And don't think 10, 15 years ahead, think relatively short term. Remember, clock speed is accelerating. Nurlan, please.
Я по-русски буду говорить. Все окей? Да?
If you can speak English, I'm not upset. Yes.
Okay, we'll try.
Okay.
So, I'm from National Technology University called MISIS, one of the technological university in Russia, one of the toppest university. In terms of 3 skills which we needed, it's basically connected with World Economic Forum agenda. We are going to produce 3 block of programs, 3 block of literacies. We call it technology literacies. We call it data literacy. We call it humanistic literacy. And we want to make through all our students through these 3 blocks. And interesting point that no one university, even in Russia, not able to give modern content among these all 3 blocks. So in technology literacy, we are going to make short specialization or micro-masters programs in the technologies like quantum technologies, like blockchain technologies, like artificial intelligence. I think it's very important, but the interesting thing that mostly all the content comes from business companies, but not from universities, not academic universities, because their content is relatively not corresponds to what we need or not corresponds to the expected outcomes from the working workforce. And the second one is a data literacy. I think in a digital economy, the data literacy is quite very important if you want to manage, if you don't want to be managed by AI, artificial intelligence. I think we have to manage artificial intelligence. We have to know, like we know English language, all the basics in data science about machine learning and about how AI works basically. And the third one is a humanistic skills. We can group in we can make a group of 3, what you called here in what needed skills from World Economic Forum. First one is the competency in your mind with lots of thinkings, design thinking, creative thinking, lots of other thinkings. Is a competency with interactions with others, for instance, team building, leadership, and etc. And the third group is a competency to understand yourself, social emotional skills, and lots of all kind of stuff. These things is very important. We call it robot-proof skills. I mean, these humanistic skills, or robot-resistant skills. These skills and knowledge very important in terms of that it cannot be substituted by automatization, by AI and such kind of machines. And within our university programs, we are going to organize such kind of educational programs in these 3 literacy, and going to send all our university campus students through these 3 block of basic main required skills for the 21st century. And the last point, to organize all these kind of things, next week we are launching a big educational event called Island. We are inviting 150 Russian university teams. Totally, it will be about 1,500 people. It's 10-day big educational boot camp where we are going to, with the leading experts all over the world, about 500 speakers, to share 3 main ideas. How to transform the universities in order to prepare talents for the benefit of the digital economy. The second one is a digital transformation of the universities, data-driven management. And the third one, how the university affects to the socio-economical development of their regions. It's a big, unique educational bootcamp. We're going to invite as well about 20 people, university teams from Kazakhstan. It's called Island 1022, which will be in Moscow next week. Thanks.
Thank you, Nurlan. I have to say that Nurlan's English is far better than mine. He doesn't even have an accent. So, Marion, what do you think? Robot-resistant skills. It's cool, eh? I have never heard of that term. Yes. But please.
Thank you. So, from the Global Association of Risk Professional point of view, so we are a professional body already building standard in the field of risk management, especially for financial services and energy market. It's already very much specific and technical. So I would say when I look at, the list of the top skills, I would say that we provide individuals with the tools and techniques that they need to practice risk management. So looking beyond those standards, I would say that they really need to develop critical thinking based on this strong technical knowledge. They really need to be able to start challenging. So the second one would be judgment and decision. They need to be able to challenge the business. In the boardroom, CROs need to be able as well to be challenging the risk people and find, the right balance here. And the last one, I would say creativity, because we see a lot of innovation. The financial services are changing a lot. We see a lot of banks that are really developing these risk innovation groups. And the idea also is really to be open and start learning from other industries, even though we are very much specific, we have the techniques in a very specific area. We really need to, to start opening up and learning from others and see how we can really encourage that creativity and innovation. So how do we help our members in the profession to move forward? So first one is that we have a risk institute. It's called GARP Risk Institute. If some of you are interested, the publication are available online for free. And we really look into new areas. And this is really where we find a lot of resources where we've been learning from others, and we're looking at, what are the new emerging needs for our members. Of course, people follow the continuing professional education program, which is based also on a number of additional skills that they need. So I think if you have a base of technical knowledge, you need to develop, for example, your soft skills, or we've seen a lot, a mix between risk management and technology that's been pretty strong. And I think the key also is to get involved with your community and participate in a number of events, just to be aware of what's going on in other areas as well. People tend to be very much focused in one area, even, we see it within risk management. People need really to open up and start being aware of what their neighbor are doing and reflect on it. They have the power to share their opinion and help building best practices. When we look at education and technology, we also have a number of resources, online communities online. We're not the only one having this. So I think that's really a key to keep developing and being aware of what's going on.
So your top three, if I remember, critical thinking, judgment and decision making, and creativity.
Yes.
Is that aligned with what Nurlan says? This will allow us to, well, obviously, in the financial services sector, about risk management, a lot of things can be automated, right? But you still have to make sense as a human being to make decisions and judgments out of that, right? You don't see that being automated in the future?
Well, I think a lot of things can be automating, and this can be good, but you still need people to take the decision on what's going to be automated, and you still need people that have enough knowledge to understand, what's the model behind it, and that's a lot of discussion that we had this year around, all the risk models are created using AI and machine learning. So those risk managers need to have both components just to understand, and but, it's all about communication. And I think, we really think, everybody's a risk manager at his own level, and people really need to take on the responsibility and making sure they understand, what they validate.
Basically, there's a future for all of you guys. So please continue to study with us, Garp and others. Well, now let's go to Bibin. Bibin, is that the way to say it?
Yeah.
Coursera, our partner as well. Coursera is probably, as you know, known for MOOCs, massive online courses. They grew out of Stanford. I mentioned that before. Nobody's perfect.
You wouldn't
I'm
let
talking
it
about
go.
me. I'm talking about me. Yeah? So, Bibin, please.
Yeah, so as Coursera, I think we have the advantage of having access to data from 40 million learners on the platform, right? So, and that can derive a lot of insights. So when we think about skills that are required, so we just released what we call the Global Skills Index. It is available online, which benchmarks 60 countries and 10 industries on the top skills that are prevalent in each of these industries and countries. So we look at skills as business, technology, and data from a high-level domains perspective. So if I think about it, digital transformation and anything associated with digital, which is primarily data management or all of the data skills that are coming in, the core of it, right, which are becoming super important. On the technology side, cloud has changed a lot of things. And finally, from a business perspective, just management of people. Right? So I think that's the way we see this, and it has slight variations depending on what function you're performing. If you're a data science team, you would probably have slightly different combinations of business, technology, and data, whereas if you're a manager, you probably have slightly different variations. Right? So that's the way we think about it from a data perspective. But beyond that, I believe, while this is the core of the skills, but then there are these soft skills that the World Economic Forum is talking about, which is primarily about how do you manage in an uncertain world, right? And which is why I think agile thinking is starting to become a lot more important, because organizations today cannot be complacent in their own strategies. So agile thinking, not from a technology perspective, but just from a culture of an organization, is super important, I believe. My own theory, that's something people haven't talked enough about. So while we have all the AI, machine learning models, etc., I think the ethics of AI and decision making will soon become important. Do I need an AI model coming in which will kind of be on the border of ethical decision making? I think that's something that we'll probably have to prepare for. So in summary, I would say, if you were to ask me, data skills, ethical decision making, and agile thinking.
Great, thank you. But it's not fundamentally different from what Marion is saying.
Absolutely.
And that's good, right? So we see actually triangulation, things coming together from different sources, which is very important. But your point about ethics. Last year, at the first Astana Finance Days, we had a panel. Herman Greff was on the panel, Sandy Frucher, who is the vice chairman of the NASDAQ, and a number of academics, including a professor from Yale University. And you know what we talked about? Mm-hmm. Financial markets in the age of the fourth industrial revolution and ethics of AI. Surprise, surprise. Actually, no, but it's very important, because after all, AI is created by whom? You and me, right? We're all biased. We may be gender biased, we may be racial biased, we're all biased, right? We all look through an issue through our own lenses.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's going to create issues. Yeah. So how do we deal with that? That's not going to be easy, and we do not have yet an answer to that. That's
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you. Vikas, we get to you, so that was... Right. Mm-hmm. All right.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I can just sort of not answer this one because it's already been so well answered by my sort of predecessors. I want to pick up on something that Nurlan said about robot-resistant skills. I actually think that needs tweaking slightly. It's robot complementary skills, because we aren't necessarily fighting for jobs, or at least we shouldn't be. We should be pushing ourselves up the value chain and working alongside robots, automation and such, to add human value. So it's really complementing the robotic technology available. I'm going to cheat slightly on the skills I think that we need. I would say emotional intelligence alongside ethics. I think they're very much hand in hand. So our ability to read people, read situations, understand what clients' needs are is incredibly important. And when you think about the ethical side of things, it's understanding what the wider ecosystem is looking for or will respond to. So what the public are thinking about what you're doing, and what your shareholders are doing, what your stakeholders are doing, what the environment concerns are. And I would add to that is that if you think about any major business generally, or any business usually, there will be two people or two professions within that organization that are actually regulated. And so ethics is so important, and that's the accounting and auditing function and the legal function. So if you have these new business models where you have a lot of technology people minded and such, two people in that organization will be regulated. The rest of the profession the rest of the business might not be. So it's so important for our profession to actually maintain that ethical basis. Creativity and vision, I think this is, again, it comes down to something that robots can't do. It's about applying real life situations or answers to real life situations in different circumstances. It's, as we move in between different careers, different sectors, being able to transpose those experiences is going to be hugely important. And last one, and this is digital acumen. It's not really on the list, but it's not to suggest that everyone has to be a techie, they have to understand how to code and program and such. It's just understanding the applications, the extent of the applications of all the new technologies that are coming out. That is the opportunities, the risks, the concerns, the costs, the implications and such. So it's just really about having that nous around you. In terms of what we're doing as an organization, ACCA has been through a lot over the past couple of years, and we've made a number of changes. So not only have we moved our exams to computer-based exams, I mean that's for logistical reasons as well as real life situations, but we've done sort of three things. We've integrated sort of digital analysis into our qualification, so looking at data analytics, because accountants and auditors use so much data, it's really understanding how to do it in real life circumstances. Second one is we've created a standalone ethics and professionalism module. Now this is to package up ethical behavior, ethical decision making, alongside the soft skills, how you operate in a work environment, what you do in certain situations. It's taking somebody from a technically capable person to an actual person that can deal with people, go to meetings and behave in the right way. And the last one is actually we've repackaged the top end of our qualification into what we call a strategic professional level. And this is taking somebody that has all of the technical knowledge of being an accountant, all of the numbers and the analysis and the laws and regulations, and saying, well, okay, what value do you add to the organization? It's about being strategic. Anyone can really be an accountant if you've got the math skills behind it, but actually taking the knowledge you have and looking at companies from small to large, digital to bricks and mortar, and saying, how do we apply our knowledge to the solution, to the problems that you're facing? That could be the deployment of capital, that could be looking at resource use, that could be restructuring, internationalizing, whatever it might be. So that's really how we're changing, and that's what we see for the future necessary.
Really interesting. You see yourself working together with robots. Very interesting, Vikas. I'm not disagreeing with you, yes. But what's also interesting is what Vikas mentioned, apart from ethics, which I think will come back many, many times, especially in the risk management professional, in the audit accounting professional, corporate governance, those are critical skills to have, indeed. But to transpose insights from one industry to another. In essence, this is very much aligned with the T-shaped professional. So again, these messages are coming back. Now, we have a final person on the first question, and that's Yaki. Do I say this correctly as well, Yaki?
Yes.
And Yaki comes actually from a different sector, right? He's not in the educational sector, he's in the tech sector. So, but then on the other hand, if you would ask the NASDAQ, are you a stock exchange, they would say no, we're a technology company. So, Yaki, please.
Hi. I have some radical things to say, so maybe I'll start with a couple of jokes, okay? You know, we have this story about this very successful businessman. He said, how you become so successful? He said, you know, I'm doing something very simple. I buy something for 100, sell it for 1,000, do my 10% markup, and I'm fine. And then, you know, I've been in the high-tech industry for many years. I think I know also some very good people that were doing over there very well. And you know the phrase that says that if you go to do an MBA, is eventually, it does not make you a CEO, it makes you someone that can work for a very successful CEO that never learned MBAs. So I'm not impressed, sorry, with statistics coming from the World Forum. I'm also not impressed with some very fancy things like T-shaped model, C-shaped model. I don't know, are you T-shaped, are you L-shaped? I'm not impressed in that. Sorry guys, you know, I think that we live today in a world that all those things collapsed. Now, already 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, this was a very popular YouTube by Ken Robinson, How Schools Kill Creativity. More than 120 million people saw this, and still we don't get it. What we need to do in order to get curiosity back is to destroy the schools, because they destroy creativity. So we are thinking how now we can go when someone is already 40, 30, bring him back something that we took out from him because we forced him through a very, very bad education system. So does this sound logical to you? So, you know, I don't know what are the best skills. I can know something for sure. It's about you. I think this is the revolution that's happening today. It's about the individual. And if it is about the individual, so, you know, I tried to find some anecdotes on the web, and we have someone here from Coursera, and I learned that the most popular course on Coursera was learning how to learn by University of California. And I met earlier here Ed Gravity, you know, one of the startups over here. They say our best seller was the course about how to learn. Okay, so I think that what people want to know is how they continue, learn, and improve themselves. And then they can only be the only judges for themselves to know. Because, you know, my wife, she's wonderful in so many things. I don't come to her and say, you have such a big emotional intelligence, I give you an A. She's good at that, okay? I don't have even a fraction of what she has over there. And I don't think that if I'll go to 10 university courses, it will ever change. So I think that the revolution that we are today is, yes, of course, we have all those people that say, okay, these are the good things, but at the end of the day, it's about the people, it's about us. We say we don't want another, you know, process education, but by the mere discussion about those 20, 30, these type of things, we are trying to create from all of us robots. So if you want to fight the robot AIs, etc., don't be the robot of society. That's my point. Thank you.
Don't be the robot of society. The second part of this question, you have all answered already. And I didn't even ask the question. But I still ask the question, but we will have the opportunity, if time is left, to come potentially back to it. But I think your organization, the question is, let me maybe bring it up to the screen so everybody can read it. Yes, here it is. How is your organization helping to prepare its constituents for them? For what? For, of course, the skills of the future. But to a large degree, you have already addressed it. Is it okay that we skip it? Yes? For now? Yes. So what I would like to do now is scaling with impact. So we're going to add a new China, a new India to the world population. 1.4 billion people by in the next 20 years, actually. They all need access to education. They all need access to learning. I want to show you one example about how a business school, it's IE Business School. I happen to be a professor there, but that's not why it's up there. Maybe it is. Okay. So, but this is what they call the WOW room. Have you heard about the WOW room? The WOW room is the world on a window. And basically, it allows to create an environment as if you're in the classroom, but you're actually not there. I'm not going to say anything more. There's a 1-minute YouTube video on this one, where the dean of IE Business School actually explains this. And Mireille is already taking care of this. Thank you, Mireille.
This is what business schools look like now. Students sitting in a classroom waiting for the professor. In a few years, it will look like this. The future has already arrived at the world's most advanced centers of learning. IE has just presented its WOW room, the classroom of the future, which revolutionizes the learning process through artificial intelligence, simulations, big data, robots, and holograms.
The WOW room is the next step in the technology immersion here at IE. Over the last 15 years, we have invested more than 25 million euros in technology innovation.
Students from over 150 countries will be educated using the WOW room, immersed in technology. Through video conferences, simulations, and big data, students will learn to manage corporate crises, design production processes, or resolve diplomatic conflicts. The WOW room software also recognizes the expressions on students' faces, gauges their level of attention, and registers their level of participation. The WOW room has 48 screens that make up a digital tapestry covering 45 square meters, as well as cameras, robots, and holographic projectors.
Just in the coming year, over 1,000 students will take part in a class in the WOW room. The heavily customized technology which we put in place here allows the faculty to very easily engage with the students and collaborate with them.
IE launched its first e-learning unit in 2002. Since then, over 3,000 students take part each year in online learning sessions. IE's online MBAs have been ranked #1 in the world by the Financial Times and The Economist for 3 consecutive years.
This is obviously not the only technology that's available. There are quite a bit. But actually, I've used this. And it's quite fascinating that it's almost a life-like experience. And that brings me actually to our 2 questions. But before we do that, I wanted to make another comment. The money, right? 2012, it's 7 years ago. Anybody who is a graduate from Wharton, the University of Pennsylvania, with an MBA? Nobody? Okay. Well, it's an excellent school. But in 2012, the cumulative debt of its 420 graduates for the first time exceeded $100 million. In other words, more than $200,000 per person. Right? More than $200,000 per person. There will be some rich kids there, so they have no debt. So one can realistically assume that debt levels are increasing because of education. So now, luckily, professional qualifications are way more affordable. Right? But business schools and traditional education are becoming increasingly expensive. So this leads me to my 2 questions, and I will actually articulate them at the same time. And then I will start, first of all, with Jackie, and then we go backwards. I think it would be good to listen to Jackie first, because this is more of a EdTech question than it is a future skills question. So the first part of the question is, how could technology, EdTech more particularly, help educational institutions, whether this is professional bodies or traditional institutions, it doesn't matter, right? Even the BCPD, we have to have impact, that's key. Scale their activities to meet the growing needs worldwide without adding additional costs. Well, there will always be cost added, right? But the idea is not to overburden students with higher cost. Does EdTech have the potential to provide a lifelike educational experience? What are the limitations, if any? Jackie?
Let me answer this way. the rich will get richer, the poor will get poorer. That's life. And unfortunately, that's also true for everything related to education technologies in the simplistic way that people refer to as education technologies. And I'll explain what I mean about that. The number one problem in the world is that your future is dictated 100% by the zip code that you are born in. And maybe also by a little bit by also maybe your mother has been doing, but 100% based on the zip code. So if you are one of those fortunates that can actually go to Wharton or whatever, then over there would be even a finer technology. So you'll get more technology and it goes to the same people that already are fortunate to get this education for them. And this is today, I think, one of the things that we are missing when we speak about impact. Because many times when we speak about it, we go back to the statistics, we forget that the number one goal for people is to move away from their destiny. Because if you are already born in the right part of New York or the right part of the world, then you are lucky. And then your opportunities will always increase because everyone will also create new technologies for you because you can pay for that. So actually, it's like a vicious circle. But if we look on education from another perspective about the opportunity for someone to move from this social demographic point to this, to jump in life, to move away this social demographic mobility, then I think we need to redefine what we are looking for impact. Because if we go back to this, so yes, there are about so many thousands students that are doing certificates on Coursera, and you know, when you look at the numbers and you try to look at the statistics, that's fine. But try to see how many of them are coming from emerging economies. This is what is more exciting, because I'm not, myself, I'm not impressed by how many going from Israel or from California or from the UK to learn on Coursera. I think that we all, as citizens of the world, need to be much more impressed from all those people that are coming from places that they do not have the access. And this is something that can take them away from one point in life to another. This is something that can change their destiny. So yes, we will always have wonderful technologies. The question is, who are actually the beneficiary? Whom are we doing the technologies for? And if you see, so many of the technologies are being done for computer science and data science and data, and for the privileged people that go to this university or that, and it's no surprise it's coming from the IE school, which is, you know, those are excellent institutes, but so much people in the world, for them, those institutes do not mean a thing. And I think that if we actually look at the promise of EdTech or education technology, is how we reach the other part of the world and not necessarily give more to those that already have so much to begin with. That's my point.
Okay. I would say the following. Never accept your destiny. Change it. Vikas.
Okay, I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle. I really enjoyed your passionate speech, but I can only really talk to what we know. ACCA, a number of years ago, created an online platform called ACCAX, and the intention behind this was threefold. One, it was to help get younger people into looking at the profession more seriously, attracting them before they got to university. But actually then we started looking at a couple of other objectives. One was to look at the family structure and how you can treat the family structure as a business and start managing your finances in that way. So using knowledge from this platform to manage your finances as a family business. And third was to encourage financial literacy and entrepreneurship. It's giving people the skills to start their own business, to know how to manage their money and to progress. And so that was really the sort of motive behind it. And we've recognized, now we're always going to be an accountancy body and we have our bills to pay and everything else, but we're a not-for-profit, so we try and invest what we make back into the qualification. But we've recognized that our physical infrastructure can only reach so many people. Yes, we need computers to take exams and centers for such, but we need to try and get more people on the move. And this really comes down to how people are learning. People don't necessarily want to sit in a classroom anymore. They don't have the time. I mean, it's one thing to spend $200,000 on a full-time degree in an MBA, but think about the cost of not going to work. You know, it's $200,000 plus your accommodation plus the salary that you're forfeiting. So a lot more people want to be able to work on the move, study on the move, or study as well as work at the same time. So we started working with a number of partners, a couple, Avado and LearnSignal, to offer flexible online training programs. And this is teaching the content via pre-recorded videos and online material. So people can read it on their phones, they can read it on their tablets, they can do it on the train and wherever they might be in their breaks at lunchtime and such. But again, this comes down to a blended learning approach. You know, we know that some people like classrooms, some people don't like classrooms, some people can afford to go to prepaid courses, some people can't. It's really about understanding our customer base, and that's actually how we're trying to grow our reach, is by giving more flexibility to the learner. It's not about what we want to do, it's about what people are telling us they need from us. So we're responding to that. And for us, you know, social mobility is incredibly important, so we really sort of believe on that basis. I think an important question to answer is, how do we consume data? And I think this is going to drive where we go, where universities go and such. And this isn't even sitting down for a long 1-hour lecture online. It's breaking it down into much, much smaller chunks. You know, you look at the use of Twitter, it's 127 or 250 characters. That's how we digest news now. We look at music videos, we look at short clips on the internet, and we make opinions from that, we learn from those. So we're going to have to start moving towards much more bite-sized chunks of learning that can be read on the go, so it can be consumed on the move, it can be picked up on, you know, in different ways. And so that's really where we're sort of going. Yeah, and so that's what I would say. That's what we're looking at. It's how do we offer a blended portfolio or blended mix of learning, working with new partners, ones that can offer the technology opportunities or solutions that we don't necessarily invest in ourselves.
Sorry, the microphone was on. Bibit, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, so Dr. Yaki, I loved what you talked about, where we sat from the pin code. And I think it's true in a way, but I think what we're seeing in Coursera, for example, is, and I'd like to answer it in the perspective of two things. One is the universities and the schools that actually educate, and the other perspective from the learner's perspective, right? So where we as a platform tend to play, and what we have been working a lot on over the past, I guess, year and a half, is how do we take these degrees online, complete degrees, right? So over the past year and a half, we have actually launched 14 full-fledged degrees online, which it's MBAs, masters in data science, whatever topics, right? Where these are full-fledged degrees which would be awarded by University of Illinois, Michigan, whoever, right? The point I guess I'm making is, what does it mean for the campuses? It's making these campuses global campuses. And from that perspective, access, what you mentioned about how do we give these campuses access to a world of learners who probably would have never had the opportunity to apply and be part of that cohort of learners, right? Now, that's on the campus side of things, how we use the technology to actually deliver a full-fledged degree like that. From a learner perspective, India is a country, I come from India, so India is a country where the per capita income is about $2,000. If you think about it, the second highest number of applications that we see for many of these degree programs that are online is from India. So there is this aspiration for what we call the social mobility. But in general, I think where it's kind of leading towards, of course, these are early days. We're still figuring out the full playbook. But if you think about it, like to your point about $200,000 of an MBA program or $100,000 on campus, these programs online are delivered at 1/10 of the cost, $20,000, which I think has social implications from all of these student debt and all of that, and also of providing mobility to our learners in that sense, while providing large-scale access to campuses. And I think there are still remnants of how we run programs in campus which are still influencing these online programs, but I think that playbook will change as we move along. That's what I think.
May I quickly ask a question to both Vikas and Bibin? Obviously, ACCA is longer established than is Coursera, right? But have you seen that you had an impact on people mobility and actually their ability to change their destiny? A quick response on this before I move on to Marion.
So from us, yes, we've seen a number of case studies of people that have pulled themselves out of debt. They've come from an impoverished background, have accessed our course, and it's given them almost a passport to an internationally recognized job, right? We have a case from Kerala, post-floods, of actually a village coming together to contribute to somebody's education. And because we're modular, it doesn't mean they're going through a massive outlay in one go. It makes a huge difference to be able to pay for this in a bite-sized fashion.
Yeah, quickly to add on, I mean, like at Coursera, we do these all hands every 2 weeks as a company all hands, and every all hands we talk about learner stories. The kind of stories like Google has this IT professional certificate, which doesn't necessarily need undergrad or things like that. Anyone can do that. We've had multiple stories of how somebody who's done a Google IT professional certificate on Coursera then went on to find a career in a computer company, right? And I think those stories are what I think make us exist in a way. So, yeah.
It's both promising from very different institutions with different histories. Great. Marion, there's always a saying, last but not least.
Yeah. So from GARP point of view, we are a little less into, technology learning for the main reason that we only administrate the exam and create the content. We are not involved in the preparation, but it still remains a self-study program. And true fact is that we've been, it's originally an American program that's been developed worldwide, and the growth today is mainly from Asia, because I guess it's a very cost-effective way for them to get to a certain level of knowledge and get an international stamp on it. From my personal experience working in education, mainly across Europe, I would say that when it comes to format of learning, there was a boom around, online learning. It's very attracting, I think, for newer generation even more, but it would really depend on the culture as well. So when you take countries that are well established, training budget within the firm, many people would tend to go for face-to-face learning. So we see it a lot in countries like France, for example. We also see that, in countries where people are more angry for knowledge, they will go more for, most effective cost way to be trained. So, yeah, there are a few aspects here. Still believe face-to-face helps, more connectivity directly, more interaction. But again, the newer generation might have different appetite. And I mean, we can see that Asia is definitely leading in that way.
You refer to face-to-face learning. We at the BCPD, and we have several of our trainers here, we have a trainers network. They're not employees, most of them, but it actually is one of the things that allows us to scale. It's also flexible cost in essence. They don't deliver training, they don't get paid. Sorry. But you make an important point. How does technology allow you actually to give that lifelike experience? Because motivation is very important, right? So let's say you get a PDF, and you have and a set of questions and a set of learning objectives that you have to go through on your own. Not easy, right? So that's one of the reasons why we have that training network. But we also see limitations with that, and we want to see how we can actually use technology in the future, and that's one of the reasons why we're actually partnering with you, and also why we have this panel to explore that, and we hope that we will explore that more in the future as well. There's a final topic that I want to explore with you, And that is actually something that may not be that obvious. That is the evolving model or apprenticeship model. If you look at ACCA, for example, and I select this one because you don't need a university degree in order to get a qualification that is at least at the level of a university degree by the time you graduate, but at the same time you also earn the experience. Yes. So is that something new? No, it's not something new. If you look here on the left-hand side, that's a carpenter. In French, carpentier. Is that correct, Marion? Yes, carpentier, yes. Actually, I cut it off the slide, but actually it is a French slide. So at the bottom, you see someone who's a baker, right? But in all situations, there is someone who knows the craft, and there's another person who helps others to learn the craft, yes? On the right-hand side, this is very different type of skill, right? This could be a lawyer, could be an accountant, could be anything, but it's obviously white collar versus blue collar. So, and I was fortunate to work for McKinsey, and McKinsey has an apprenticeship model. And it's based on a system of continuous coaching and feedback. Now, but at the same time, it's not just on-the-job training. You also have traditional courses, whether they're face-to-face or they are based on a different learning model. So let me get to my question. 3 questions this time. Let me see. Well, the questions are roughly the following. Do you see that the apprenticeship model is actually getting a new life and is becoming much more broader? Just to give another example, I was working in Switzerland for about 9 years, and we were working with a senior banker and who had done his entire career with what's the Swiss bank based in Zurich? It's a large bank. UBS, yes. So, and I got to know him quite well. Happens to be a male person. Never got a university degree. Never, yes. And that was the norm at UBS. It was the norm at the time at UBS. That basically they recruit promising people when they graduate from high school at the age of 18. And they work, of course, together with professional bodies. But 6 years down the road, they have gained significant experience and an education experience at least equivalent, similar to what I referred to about ACCA. In the United Kingdom, I've met recently lawyers that are doing exactly the same. So they enroll in a law school, not in a law school, not in a school at all, in a law firm as an apprentice. They may also enroll later on in a law program, and over time they actually not only earn the accreditation through a law degree or a professional body, but at the same time they gain experience. So is that any better than the traditional model? Is that actually spreading? Is that becoming broader? Is that the future? Is that something we should embrace in Kazakhstan as well? That basically we learn from each other as much as we do learn from textbooks and in the classroom. So that's roughly the question I'm asking. But the last one it comes back actually to ethics, right? Is there a bias against the apprenticeship model? Or well, basically people say, Giuseppe, you never got a university degree, right? Although I know you do. It's Dr. Giuseppe, right? Dottore Giuseppe. But I single him out because we're lifelong friends since yesterday. But there are stereotypes, right? You don't have a university degree, and actually in Kazakhstan, if you don't have a university degree, you can not have a managerial position, right? So maybe we have to change that. Maybe it's better to embrace the apprenticeship model. That's a question to my panel. Let's do it randomly. Let me see. Let me start with ACCA, and then I go to Yaki, then Bibin, and I give the last word for the sake of diversity, but there's a very diverse panel, to Mario. Okay, Vikas, you first.
Right, so the questions. Importance of apprenticeship model, hugely important. We've always taken the position, or at least we're the first body in the UK, to take the position that you don't have to have a degree, as Alexander said. And the reason being is sort of twofold. Is that if you've got on the positive side of things, if you have the ability and the motivation to do it, then you can become an ACCA qualified accountant. And that's the point, it's the ability and the motivation. And the reason for not having to have a degree is because a degree can be incredibly limiting. I mean, you can come from a background where you can't afford to go to university, you have to work, or perhaps it's just not suited to you. Classroom-based learning isn't suited to you. And so we made the decision to change our program such that that is the case. Now, we work in a number of countries where you have to have a degree in order to become a regulated auditor or an accountant. And that's a bit of a challenge for us. But we're seeing a number of people moving to us anyway, either to become qualified finance professionals, or we're engaging with governments to try and change regulation on that basis. Is it more effective than traditional education? There's no real straight answer to that. I think university has its place for academia, for research, for in-depth studies. I think you gain a lot from the experience university. I certainly did. I think, but actually, you know, again, it comes down to the individual character. There's no one answer. I think you need people. Well, you don't. There's no difference actually. Somebody that goes to university, comes out with a degree, and then sits the remainder of our exams, for example, will actually become qualified later than somebody starting their program at the apprenticeship level, going through, sitting their exams, and getting the experience, because they'll have the experience whilst they're working. So it's not. I wouldn't say it's more effective. It's not really as simple as that. Is there any bias? Now, a couple of personal points on this one. It's interesting you mentioned UBS. My father came to the UK without a degree and finished, you know, the best part of 30 years of his life in UBS and succeeded to a significant level without a degree. And actually that was fine then. But then we sort of went through this process where you had to have a degree. Now, this is down to politics, right? But you had to have a degree. Everyone, in order to get into a graduate program, you had to have a degree. There was so much money thrown at universities to get people into degrees without really thinking about the why and the implications of doing so. And now we're in this position where we are spiraling into student debt, either on an individual basis or at a supranational basis where they're having to face the burden of managing this debt. But I think we're moving away from the bias around not having a degree. And it's going from not having a degree to doing something else, because that was really the mentality. Oh, well, you've got a degree or you don't have a degree. Actually, you've got a degree or you've got an apprenticeship program, which is actually really hugely respected because it gives people a much greater opportunity to get engaged in an industry at an early level where they might not necessarily be suited for education or the sort of formalized education. And so when you've got companies like KPMG and EY and PwC in our world, going down, well, firstly, they removed the question around what degree you had and where you went to university. Actually, did you get a degree at all? They started going down to academic capability or performance earlier on. And then they started looking at degree apprenticeship schemes where they get people before university because they recognize, well, actually, why do we want somebody that's come out of university with a shed load of debt? Let's get them early. Let's get them interested early. And speaking from a family perspective again, my cousin, you know, again, very academically bright, expected to go to university because that's what you did. She didn't. She joined KPMG. Deloitte, and she's on one of these schemes. And I was talking to her, and she said, yeah, I mean, I've got friends that have gone to university. They're obviously, you know, having fun and such, but I'm not paying fees. I'm learning everything else. I'm meeting people in the workplace. I'm developing all these skills. And you think, yeah, that's hugely respectable. I think we should do more of that. Not just in the UK, I think internationally. I think UK, actually, we're not the best example of apprenticeships. Germany, I think, is much stronger. But this is something certainly that should be rolled out more globally. And again, for the social mobility angles, it reduces the cost of having to pay for universities if you don't have to.
Yagi, please excite us.
I would like to try to treat it as two separate issues. One is the cultural thing related to a perception that we have toward a degree or toward vocational versus university degrees, etc. And the second is the aspect of learning and learning what you know about learning. So apprenticeship is not something new. It's games, to learn from games is not something new. I mean, if you go back to the work of Aristotle and Confucius and the Jewish tradition, they already 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, they already knew so much about learning. So let's separate learning from the cultural issues. Yes, they do have the apprenticeship model in Germany, but when I speak to people in Germany, they say, but we don't have any innovation. You know, so the apprenticeship model is like maybe like 1,000 years ago when you were born to a shoemaker, so you become a shoemaker. That's maybe but then they say, but we are lacking innovation. So, you know, let's try to separate it, and maybe I'll give you some indication about what's happening in Israel. In Israel, I always give people a question in math, because if you actually look at the Council of Higher Education, they published every year statistics, so you know they send their PR beginning of the academic school, and said in the last 10 years the number of students is being stable, about 306,000 students all the way there, and the number of students in PhD degrees tripled, and the number of students in a master degrees quadrupled, and the number of students from Arabs or Druze sectors magnified. And I asked a very simple first grade math question. If this and this and this increase, how is the number stable for the last 10 years? So what they don't tell you is actually less and less people are interested to go to university. So yes, on one hand, yes, you have more PhDs, etc. But then, if you go to the Israeli high-tech, the Israeli high-tech companies do not necessarily hire you, even for the toughest technical IT or data science, based on your degree. Some of them are even go to an extreme and say, if you wasted 4 years of your life going to university, maybe you're not good for us. You know, that's maybe extreme, but I would like to say that, you know, if we actually look at it from this perspective, and if we understand that sometimes it's a matter of cultural bias, we should ask ourselves, what is better, to change the cultural bias or to try to change the system? And, you know, we have a very good friend from Coursera, and, you know, we in Israel, we think, we actually made Coursera Israeli because of Daphna, okay? So, you know, we say, and I was excited because my son, he works in a very successful high-tech company. I said, okay, are you doing courses on Coursera? He said, yes, of course. Are you listing those courses on your CV? He said, are you nuts? And I said, why? He says, because if I list them on my CV, my boss will say, you don't have the guts to do a master's degree? You are settling for, so it's cultural thing. And you know, in some other locations, maybe it will be excellent to put it on your CV. And I don't know if it was you or someone else that I met like 3 years ago in EDTECH. We were having this discussion. And so if you understand that this is a cultural thing, then maybe sometimes what we can do is also to change the perception that we have about certain jobs. And maybe this sometimes can give us a new level of understanding, because I don't know if you're realizing, but the largest education provider today, one of the largest face-to-face education provider in the world is WeWork. I mean, you don't think about it, but think about it. WeWork already have like 400,000 people. Majority of them, 82% of them are freelancers and SMBs. They go over there, they're part of a community, so they do not need the apprenticeship model because they're already part of such a good networking, etc. And over there, that's the largest concentration of kids in the age of 20 to 35, that they are freelancers, and they learn from each other, and then they start to learn from WeWork. So actually, Now you start to understand why WeWork signed the agreements with 2U and they've done some things. So if you think about it in a different way, say, hey, and those people, they are interested in upskilling and upskilling, but they get those courses, small bits between happy hour and sushi, because it's a different mentality when you go to WeWork. It's not the corporate culture. So we usually do not regard this as an educational institute, but if we also look at this as an educational institute, and we also look at the gig economy and freelancers, etc., then there is so much that is already happening. So the apprenticeship model, it's wonderful because it's part of the learning models that we have. But should we try to enforce it top-down? Or maybe it's easier to change the perception of people in the culture towards this? I don't know.
Yeah, this is always a tough one, right? I mean, essentially, I don't think there's like a one-odd answer here. But to me, I think it's fundamentally boils down to the learner, right? Not all learners are equipped to be doing their careers through this model or the other model, right? I mean, in that sense. And for me, I think what is really changing over the last, obviously, few years is the number of careers people go through, right? Essentially, all the stories that we heard about UBS of 30-year-old careers. If people are going to be, I mean, they say up to 5 careers in your lifetime, right? And if you're potentially changing careers, do you have the skills to and the adaptability to be able to change careers, right? And so does the apprenticeship model allow you to do that and build that adaptability? Or do you need some level of fundamental first principles to be understood well so that makes you more adaptable? I think that's a key question. I'm not so sure both of the models really do effectively, honestly speaking, right? Even on the university model, there are the on-the-job training is 6 months in Indian companies, right? Only about 25% of engineers coming out of Indian universities are employable technically. So companies spend 6 months trying to do the apprenticeship model after an engineering degree, right? So I think there is a bit of both, I guess. But I do think the apprenticeship model is truly inclusive. And from that perspective, from a social mobility and all of those kind of angles, which again brings back to the question of cultural biases. So I feel like in emerging markets where you're still figuring out this playbook, I feel like the model has in general, both these models will coexist and will have to coexist, I feel.
I've just been told that I don't learn very well from experience. We're running late, basically, so I've been a bad moderator. I do apologize for that. Marion, if you 3 minutes, I will conclude with 2 minutes. Is that fair? Is
Yes.
that good? All right, thank you.
So just 2 points, I think, that haven't been highlighted in the conversation. The first one is, around certification, like CCA, like the FRM, where there is no prerequisite to get into a program. I think it's, giving people a chance. I still think university degrees valued. I mean, I see it for the FRM. If you don't have mathematics background, it's going to be very challenging. So I think it's stepping stone. What I found very interesting is when, it's originally from the US, and that's really the model they operate. So most of the time, people will get maybe a bachelor degree, start working, they will never jump directly into a master and MBA. They're going to get work experience, see what they want to do, and then they're going to either go for an MBA or a professional certification. The second point is on apprenticeship. I'm originally from France, and I actually did study with apprenticeship, but in different models. Like, you follow a university degree, so you get graduated like anybody else from university, but you have this opportunity to actually work part-time. So the company is financing your studies, and 3 days a week, you're going to be working for that firm, and 2 days a week, you're going to be going through the courses. Obviously, it's much more intense than if you were a full-time student, but it's also always a very good trick to start developing your network. You're much more employable, and you still get the same background knowledge as the other one. So I think this is where it's pretty interesting. Again, it's cultural. when I was 18, I had to choose the right university track, otherwise I could never change job if I remain in France. When I look at the firm that we work with, especially in the UK, the US, it's totally different. So they have this graduate program, and they're going to hire people, yeah, most of the time with, bachelor or master degree, but they come, they have philosophy background, history, geography. In France, if you have a geography master degree, this is good for you, but you won't get a job. You can only be a teacher. That's, how it is. And here, they really train their staff. I mean, it's challenging, obviously, because they need to build new knowledge, but you can end up in finance with philosophy background. And I think this really helps also to have this mixity of profile within the industry.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, may I tell you a personal story? If not, we can just leave. You want to hear a personal story? Okay. The personal story is about, obviously, me, and it's about change your destiny. Are you ready? May 18th, 1978. Long time ago, right? Alike, that's my name in Kazakhstan, diving accident, paralyzed for 4 years, including the recovery. No high school diploma, okay? I came from an upper middle class family, yes? So you're going to say, no issue, right? Upper middle class family in Belgium, right? Not in Kazakhstan, in Belgium. So should be high income. My parents came to visit me during my recovery, and this was a little bit more than 1 year my recovery. They both died in a car accident. Okay? One of the brothers of my father took over the business because of fraud, but we didn't know how to detect it. The business went bust. So I finally came out of recovery, 23, not even a high school diploma. Not even a high school diploma, right? I have now 2 bachelor's degrees. I have 4 master degrees. I have 3 PhDs. I have 4 professional qualifications, including a chartered director qualification. I have started 6 businesses. They all still exist today. 2 are still under my control. Tell me that you cannot change your destiny. Yes, you can. Thank you. Give a hand of applause to these people. Never accept your destiny, because it does not exist.